Okay, so today's, if we start with you, you were talking about the environmental aspects of sustainability. And one specific question was, how do you tackle climate change within your work?
Okay, before we started to answer the questions, we had two interesting presentations, one from Barbara, from Mariham, and one from Vesa from Dinkala in Finland. From Barbara's presentation, the three things that stood out is that we need to communicate in a language that is understandable to the residents, not just political speak, as they say. And the goals integrated into the strategy makes it easy to budget for them and to monitor them. And the third thing that came up in the presentation is the importance of regional cooperation in working towards the SDG, regional agreements between different municipalities, and also how we can use carbon sinks in land use planning. For tackling climate change, the first and most important was to lead by example. As in, those who are pushing the policies should be able to show that they are living according to these policies they are pushing, and that goals with potentially big impact should be highlighted. There was also the issue of timelines that are just dropped on the residents. It was emphasized that timelines should be announced and residents should be given time to adapt to the changes. And also we tackled climate change by sharing knowledge and awareness, by climate-friendly mobility options like carpooling, biking, remote working, public transport. Those are the options that
Okay, the second question is, how do you work for affordable clean energy?
Okay, some of the smart solutions, and one that was really interesting was solutions that also have value for the citizens. For instance, there was one municipality where they emphasized that companies that want to invest in clean energy should be able to show the value that they are going to create for citizens. And residents could actually buy shares in this company, and the profits from these shares are used as savings or pensions. And then there was also one smart solution was using services that support each other. For instance, using an ice rink to warm, using the ice rink and the swimming pool in one place, cooling one and warming the other. And then there was also the idea of cautioning our dependence on electricity because it requires high efficiency. And then other options were solar energy, hydropower, wind, hydrogen. And then we have to be able to there was also an initiative of purchasing e-cars as joint ventures to be able to escape high costs and administrative prosecution on the
So we talk a lot about the fact that the environmental aspects of sustainability are most visible, and that's what people often see as sustainability in a way, so people forget economics and social aspects. But did you discuss this at all in your group, how to ensure that the environment is actually linked up with the social and economic aspects?
I think we bore more on the environment because that's what we were discussing. That came up, it was in the discussion, it was not planned. I don't know.
Other comments or additions? Yeah.
So Helene Nilsson, I'm the head of the Nordic Council Minister's Office in Lithuania. I participated in this group, but I would like to add that we also discussed how difficult it is to be a consumer, and that we really need some guidance, maybe into eco-labeling or to make the right choice as a consumer. And I look at my Lithuanian friends. We also very much discussed or wanted to add the importance to include youth as soon as possible.
Yes, I think that goes. Well, you're not going to be on camera. I'm sorry, Helen. Hope your voice was there. Yeah, youth goes through everything we discussed today. So, thank you, Theresia. We move on to Sarah and the social sustainability. And there you were talking about the experience of working with gender in relation to the SDGs. Or even gender budgeting in spatial planning. That sounds really concrete.
Yes, we had really interesting discussions based and influenced by two really interesting presentations on planning for gender perspective or increased gender perspective, and we also did a programming exercise. What we kind of summarized is that gender is not very known in planning, and there's a need for awareness raising in planning with a gender perspective. Also to reflect on who should be invited to the planning, not only count the heads, like how many women and men and others that you have there, but also focus on the individuals and let them be individuals as well. It's important to take the differences into account and to use this as knowledge for the planning, to enhance for prioritization in the planning job. And also we talked about that it is important to set the gender perspective in a broader context, to have a broad systems perspective, and to try and see, for example, not only say, okay, now we have a gender perspective in this, but look to the waste management, or different types of planning, and so on. When it comes to the first question, there was a little bit discussion about methods, and apparently there is a method, or there are methods for quantifying effects from investments in spatial planning and to calculate how different groups gain from investments. I haven't seen it myself, but it sounds really interesting, I think. Another discussion we had related to the first question was that infrastructure has a lot of money in the plan, while the gender equality has not. There's a big difference there. And maybe that has to do with a low level, or generally low level of knowledge or an awareness generally among planners. So maybe there you have to do something in the at universities, in the educational programs, and to integrate those issues earlier and more clearly into the educational programs for planners.
Okay, and then the next question is, how do you work with SDG 16, which I can see over here, is peace, justice, and strong institutions. I haven't actually learned these by heart, I'm sorry. But peace, justice, and strong institutions is often maybe something you connect with other parts of the world and think, oh, well, we have it sorted out here. We're the least corrupt countries in the world and so on. But
on the surface, perhaps?
On the surface, so tell us what's below the surface.
No, but in our discussions, we came up with 3 keywords that kind of went through the discussions. There were trust, transparency, and democracy. And for trust, we talked about that there needs to be a trust in local, national, and international organizations. And to have trust, there is a need to be transparent, so they can build this trust, and so you can build the democracy. We talked a lot about young people and young people's importance for the SDG 16 and for being able to do this. And to make place for young people and plan for them and with young people without putting the responsibilities on their heads. We had one example from France where kids were involved in planning of, I don't remember if it was a school or preschool or something, They could choose the colors of the walls of the toilets, or they could choose the plants in the garden or the recreation area. And from that, they actually felt much more responsible for the premises, and it made them feel involved as well. That's quite natural, of course. We also talked about that young people before had a voice, but now they have a voice and a vote, and can have an impact on governmental decisions in a different way compared to some years ago. There's much more emphasis on it now, but we also need to ensure that there is hope, not that they feel that they are disencouraged or felt feeling of despair. And that leads us on to the next thing that we discussed, which is well-being.
Which one, sorry?
Well-being. So if we feel well, then it's easier to feel trust in other people and perhaps also in local authorities and other types of authorities.
Did you say you had an example from France?
Yeah.
Also, this is moved from a Nordic knowledge sharing to European knowledge sharing then.
Yeah.
So,
democracy, there to talk to each other was one thing, and that could also lead to this trust issue and also to overcoming the potential problems with transparency. We had a discussion on the divide between the rural and urban areas, and if there is an unfair division of resources between rural and urban areas, there could be a loss in trust. And at the end, we talked a little bit about the SDGs and how they were implemented in different types of municipalities. And we did a very quick comparison between Denmark and Sweden. And through my research, I've seen that SDGs in small municipalities in Sweden actually is quite in the forefront. And that was the case apparently in Denmark too. And that in larger municipalities it appeared to be a bit more difficult to do this full integration. And we did some analysis on that, and perhaps it's easier to get this trust in a smaller municipality. You feel more responsible towards your municipality. You know perhaps someone who works there, or maybe you know the politicians. You feel responsible to contribute to the development of a small municipality. That could be one reason. And also, there are so many small municipalities, so it's a big force there. So, yeah, trust, transparency, and democracy. That's it.
sounds like a nice place to be. We've discussed a lot about this, the fact that it can be really difficult to make the sustainable development goals real to people, or to make people feel engaged and that it actually matters at the local level. Did you discuss whether the social aspects of sustainability, is that an area where you can make it more palpable somehow, make it more real and close to the heart of people, or is that actually economics or environment?
We didn't really discuss that. We were so into the gender equality perspective, and that's a good example that we started off the discussion, so we didn't really discuss that. Maybe, did I miss something?
Or maybe you indirectly are saying, answering my question, because it's something that engages people. And
if you do it in a positive way, it could also disencourage. I think if you impose it on them in a negative way.
okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
With some quantitative recommendations which I have to mention. The idea of having brave politicians who can initiate decisions and follow through, even in the face of resistance. I think that came up several times in the discussions. It's very important implementing these goals. And then there also has to be a balance between what is voluntary and what is mandatory. For instance, if a municipality has one individual who is very invested in the sustainable development goals, then they push the agenda at the local level. And then there is another one which doesn't have the fallback. So there has to be some kind of balance between these two.
For brave politician, I think that goes under 16 as well in many ways. Thank you for that. Then finally, the panel on, or the session on economic sustainability. as I mentioned, we had presentations from Malin Aas from the UN Association Sweden and Julia Andersen from Sønderborg, Denmark. And then we had you, Britta, to tell us what was discussed in your reflections on it. And the first question was how to bring businesses on board in the work with the 2030 agenda.
Yes, maybe I should say also how I think the presentations made us think about the economy in wider sense than businesses. Because the two presentations, I think, took a broader perspective of what the economy is. It's about the employment and the labor market, and it's about economic sustainability, also about the municipalities to make the budget. So I think our discussions in general was broader than the business sector. It was also about the economy more.
Actually, I threatened to ask you what is economic sustainability because it wasn't quite clear. People have different conceptions of it.
Yes. Yeah. So the first question, how to bring business on board. What we discussed, I think, was because then it's becoming a cross-sector engagement between the public municipalities of the public sector and the company sector of the private companies. So then I think we discussed what makes sense and difference and triggers the company sector when it comes to sustainability, and how can the municipalities work to encourage that. And again, I think was presented a lot from the first session. It's about procurement. The procurement aspect was brought up to the discussion again. How can procurement be used and a useful tool when it comes to encourage the business sector to become more sustainable? So we aimed quite a lot of discussions towards that, and that is an issue about learning, I think, from the university perspective and learning perspective. It's the aspect of procurement is extremely complicated, as you know, and it's very complicated for the public sector to manage the procurement in a sustainable to support sustainable development. And one aspect that was brought up is that it's very important to make public procurements, also small businesses can be included. That is about economic sustainability. It was also discussed how the activities within physical planning, that's important tasks for the municipalities. How can physical planning and the procurement activities that happens through physical planning be managed to support sustainable development? So procurement from different aspects was the main discussion point. The other main, I think, theme for how to encourage businesses to be engaged was about education. And that was one example how the topic about the economy became broadened out. That for the business sector, for the company sector, it's of course a requirement to have people to recruit, have a supply of an educated workforce. So that was the example from Denmark. Sønderborg was, I think, expressing that to us and made us think about how education is the education that is managed through local authorities is an important task to support businesses and also to try to engage businesses to higher the quality of education. So education and procurement, I think, was the main themes when it comes to how to bring businesses on board.
We also had an interesting discussion. I think you mentioned the fact that when you talk about circular economy, the whole system and the whole mindset of accountants and economic advisory boards or committees or whatever, they are simply not geared to thinking in that way. They cannot think about reuse or they are just so tied into this growth and just use and throw away mentality. What can we do about that?
Yes, I don't think anyone really can answer that question. It's really in the air, I think, how we can use the budget or the economic. There is a political steering, of course, of the municipalities, but also this system for how to manage the budget and both the investment budget and also the budget for how do you say this in English? Driftbudget, budget for how you aim resources for education and for physical planning and things.
For running things.
Yes, for running things. Yes, I don't think there is. I guess there isn't really a solution to that, but when I talk around with people, I can hear that this is really becoming a key topic. How can municipalities and other organizations use economic steering as a tool to gain sustainable development? So the question popped up, and we didn't have the answer in any way, but we agreed on that this is an important question.
So it's a question of mindset, really.
Yeah.
Then we had an overarching question that went through all the discussions, actually also in the morning, and I forgot to ask you that, but you'll get another chance in a second. But is what type of help is needed to further the work with the sustainable development goals? I've said it so many times now. So what is help? If we say, okay, this is the messages for the minister, we want to write up something that really has resonance. If you, from your perspective, particularly from a local, from a municipality or regional perspective, what do you need from, say, the government or other actors to actually get going with this? Do you have any additional reflections?
I think I made a summary when we had the workshop. I think from the discussion, I can see, and I can also hear that when I meet municipalities in my research work and outreach activities, is that there is a division between what are the mandatory tasks of municipalities. What do the municipalities are obliged to do? They are obliged to organize education, healthcare, physical planning, and that is a huge task when it comes to the Nordic countries, and a main task. And there is also, the municipalities also have a role to be a society partner and driving development and moving societies and make the societies more in general to move towards sustainable development and resilience, of course. And there is a divide, or there is a continuous discussion throughout municipalities and through the politicians in the municipalities. In which way should we be engaged also outside our mandatory tasks? And part of that involves, I think, the third question. In which way should municipalities be involved, for instance, in business networks, and or should other organizations and intermediaries work with that? Who is in charge with that? In which way should municipalities be responsible, or are there other organizations around that should be involved in that?
So there's a need for clarity, transparency, and a need for guidance, that it becomes more clear who does what, and what is your role, and what is, so that it doesn't fall between chairs.
I think it's partly that, and it's partly also a political issue. It depends on the political aims and goals of different municipalities, and also in which way the municipalities also can collaborate with regions, for instance. In Sweden, this is a big history because the regions are quite recently organized in slightly different ways. So what is the division of labor between the municipalities, the regions, intermediaries, business networks? And this is continuously moving. And this is continuously, I think, a debate. I think you recognize that role if you come from the municipality sector or the regions or the intermediaries in different ways. So we will continue to discuss that.
I think someone also said in your group, someone said we don't need more reports, we need action. We need action plans, and we need something really clear. So I guess that means not radios out of work, but then maybe things start happening, which is of course what we're here for. I forgot to ask a question of the first round. Do you have anything else to add in terms of what type of help is needed from your perspective in a more general sense? No, I'm putting you on the spot here. So what type of help is needed, if you want to sum up what you were saying, so what type of help is needed for municipalities to be able to move forward?
Well, I think that the learning process, we have discussed that a lot, I think that both the civil servants as politicians in municipalities need more information, and there has to be a long perspective. And what I think is a little bit dangerous right now is that we have a kind of a very short time perspective often nowadays when we make decisions, and also quite strong populist atmosphere, and this is quite dangerous. So what you said about brave politicians and also brave civil servants, that is something that we really need, and an open mind to really be ready to try new ways of managing societies and municipalities.
Okay, so the chance or the framework, the chance to be able to think long term and not just look at the next budget year, and even also going back to what we talked about public procurement and so on, you don't always have to choose the cheapest, you should maybe just choose the best. And I get a feeling also in some ways that maybe sometimes you just need someone to tell you that you're doing okay, that you're actually doing a lot of great work. More opportunities to share it. Okay, thank you for that. Maybe there is hope for research institutions like already to find more events like this. If you have no more observations, we shall move on to the final part, which is actually looking ahead. But thank you to you also.